Hi, we're Group 14 with Rachel Bessany, Daniel Bodemer, Ashley McInerney, Jen Smigelski, and I'm Cody Williams. This is our agenda for the day. But for the sake of time, let's just get started. After taking a look at sample the data, we noticed how different stores within the same dealer network were buying the same part within 1 to 3 days of each other. We saw this as a major problem that could be fixed by inventory visibility. With this concept, a store could see if another store close by within its same network had the same part, saving money and time for both the customer, CAT, and the dealer. As you can see with our numbers, we kept the lead time the same and decreased the shipping cost due to the closer store location within the network. Overall, the cost would decrease for the dealer. In our example, the savings were $500 for the overall order. Now imagine those savings if that was put across the entire 178 dealer CAT network. Customer service levels and satisfaction would improve and dealers would be happy. Other benefits we saw were that stores would order less often, saving both money and manpower. The only trade-offs we saw were high order quantities, which could lead to higher holding costs. Now I'll pass it off to Rachel, where she will talk about our plans for sharing gains.
So in order to find a solution to this issue of sharing parts among dealers, we came up with a two-pronged solution. The first being a basic profit sharing plan, the second being a more out-of-the-box solution, developing a pool of profits for the dealers to share. So this is just a basic example of how we visualize the profit sharing margin, or the profit sharing solution. I'll go into a little more detail. So say for example, store 1 is in need of a tire. Store 2 has extra tires on hand. Store 2 is going to sell that tire to Store 1, and Store 1 is going to pay the full unit price to the dealer that supplied them the tire. The store is then going to sell the tire to the customer at whatever price that their typical price is, and then the store that sent them the tire is going to be able to receive a small percent of that, a small or large percent of that profit. So basically the way that we see this working out is on a scale of percentages. So obviously the VAU class 1 are these more commodity items, perhaps nuts and bolts, screws, things like that. So they're low unit costs, so it makes sense to have a higher percentage of that profit sharing. Versus class 12, these are the more costly items, therefore there's higher unit costs, so it would make sense to have a lower percentage that is going back to the dealer. At the end of the month, all the parts will be reconciled through the system, so that way, say if I'm a store and I sold an item for 50% markup, the store that gave me that part in order to sell to my customer, it could potentially receive 30% of the profit that I gained, and I would only be getting 20% in order to share that equity among the different dealers. The shipping would obviously be paid for the store in need, since they're the one who needs to get it to their customers as soon as possible. Basically, the ultimate goal is to make sure the customers are getting the parts they need when they need them. Obviously, every hour that a machine is down or unable to run, they're losing out, and they are looking for different solutions that may not be coming to a CAT dealer in order to fix their problem. And this also provides a financial repercussion if different stores are either overstocking or understocking, and it would be really easy to see that through the system of reconciling the different parts, and so it wouldn't incentivize that at all. Kind of tying this into a real life example that I saw during my internship at John Deere, this is a great way to ensure that if CAT can't get a part to their store when they need it for some reason, there's a shortage in rubber and there are very few tires in stock at CAT, dealers will be able to share them amongst themselves, and they're also more incentivized to do so because they're not worried about each other cutting into their profit margins. This is our other solution, is the potential idea of a pool of profits. So you can think about this similarly to in the restaurant industry when servers share a jar of tips at the end of the night, making sure that everyone is kind of getting their fair share for the amount of work that they had. So everyone would be entered into this pool quarterly, let's say, and you could either gain more profits or lose profits. So this also goes into that idea of there being no incentive to either under or overstock your inventory levels. It's going to encourage that higher service level and customer satisfaction, which is ultimately the goal of any really good dealer. And it would be a really positive way to encourage more communication amongst the dealers and almost making sure that even the smallest dealers and the largest dealers all have an equal stake in making sure that they have accurate inventory levels.
Before we discuss the benefits of real-time data, we wanted to give a little validity to the benefits that we see in this program by including the first-hand experience of one of our group members, who is consulting for a third-party logistics firm for a capstone project for a class she is currently taking. Outside of everyday functioning, programs such as this can provide real-time updates in areas such as capacity, demand, and service level. These programs also aid in contingency plans. An example for you to visualize is if a port in California closes for some reason. A store in Minnesota can see this and know to request parts from the East Coast instead. Real-time data can also show temperature. When there is a temperature drop, more stores need to have various items in stock that are prone to failure in the cold. This real-time data can alert you of this so that arrangements can be made for stores in these areas. Because the real-time data can optimize inventory, stores can more accurately assess demand and therefore decrease their average safety stock while also increasing service level, the ultimate goal. All of these benefits of real-time data allow CAT to maintain its competitive advantage through the extra information sharing occurring throughout its dealer network.
When determining the orders per year optimization, we originally looked at EOQ, but then we figured that wouldn't be really an accurate result for you guys. So we went to linear programming. When you think linear programming, you oftentimes think optimal solutions. So the first thing that we needed to do is get the VAU information and the order per dealer information onto one Excel spreadsheet. So we use Access to kind of aggregate all that information so we can easily manipulate the data to get the most accurate results. So just so you're aware, when we were running our software, we did not run it on the parts that were not going to be replenished. So if it had replenishment of no, we filtered that out of the data. So as you're aware, linear programming has your decision variables, your objective functions, your constraints. So just so you're aware kind of what we did, our decision variables we set at the VAU class. You asked for a VAU class order per year, so that's why we made that our decision variables. As well, when determining the objective function, we thought about maximizing profit, minimizing cost, but it was a lot easier for us to minimize cost. Just so you know, we did use the average VAU cost per class, as well as we included those ordering costs into that as well. We do know this leads to error by using the average cost, but we figured this would just be a good model for you to thus implement. And constraints, you wanted all of the orders to fall within that 25% range as stated in the case, so we made that a constraint. As well as the other challenging constraint was that our decision variables were based off VAU class, and then we were looking at it from a dealer level, so we had to make the VAU class a percentage of that specific dealer and set an additional constraint based on that as well. So just so you can look at the data, I do apologize, it is a little messy, but this just kind of shows you our thought process. You can see the solver here as well as us making all the VAU a percentage off of a specific dealer. I believe that's the second one. And as you can see, when we were going through, we had a range of orders per year. Some of them range from 300 a year, some about 2,000. But based off the fact that there's 170 dealers in the network, we didn't think those were too outlandish of numbers. So if you have further questions, we're happy to answer in the next round. That's pretty much what we did for orders per year optimization.
As stated in case, the parts inventory collaboration allows us to set order quantities for the parts to be ordered through the dealers. Along with the assistance from new inventory management software, uniformity and communication for order batching will be the ultimate outcome. In order to operate at a realistic service level with lower costs, we use the empirical formula on the forecasted quantities for both dealers to come up with optimal figures for minimum and maximum order constraints. First, we ignored all forecasted values that were less than 1 because of the lack of relevant demand placed on those specific parts. Next, we looked intently over the data to spot trends and ranges that we could divide the data into in order to come up with our means and standard deviations. These ranges were chosen based on their proximity in forecasted quantity and unit cost. Our suggestion for order constraints will make for a low-cost inventory management process. Once the ranges were decided, the statistical measures could be calculated. As you can see, our minimum level is the mean minus 1 standard deviation, while the maximum is the mean plus 1 standard deviation. From statistics, we know that the empirical formula, the mean plus or minus 1 standard deviation, accounts for a 65% service level. Although this may seem low, it is a realistic goal that we believe a first-class logistics firm, like Caterpillar, will have very little issue operating at. Although some forecasted demands may not be met, we feel that it is much more important to keep our inventory stock low, which will mitigate the chance of having to bear the cost of expensive holding practices. This wraps up our presentation to you. We hope that you enjoyed our input and will be happy to answer your questions in the next round. Thank you for listening.